Marco,
Sean,
where are you headed to?
uh, just got
Where are you heading from?
got that from the kitchen. I just made coffee.
There you go.
There is a reason for it. It's a
We
little
all have
early
coffee.
here for a podcast, but couldn't trust you alone with our
I
guest
know,
today.
I know, I know.
So I
Our good
gotta I
friend
gotta be
Jim.
there. I don't know what the two are gonna do.
we're gonna have too much fun. You just didn't want to be left out. That's what it
Exactly.
is. That's what it is. And it's not early for me. I'm back on the East Coast, and
Oh, right on. Yeah, it's
yeah,
8 a.m. here out in the
yes,
So it's not
out in the
too
West
too
Coast.
not too early, but
No,
it's coffee time. It's coffee
it
time.
is
we're
coffee.
experts. Sleep, my friends. Sleep is for beginners. We're
Sleep,
experts. We don't need that stuff.
sleep is.
It sounds good.
Sounds
I don't
good.
believe it, but it sounds good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, here we are, Marco. It's what we love to do the most, which is help our good friends tell the stories about what they're doing to help secure our businesses and our customers and ultimately our society. Right? Where companies are building apps like never before, and if those things aren't protecting the data and protecting the actions that those data's drive, we're in big trouble, and we see it all the time, sadly. But there is a way, there is a path forward, and our good friend Jim has been at the forefront of that journey for a long while. And there are some things that I'm sure people know, like the OWASP Top 10. Uh, Jim has been instrumental in that years ago, if I'm not mistaken, and we're gonna hear about Jim and what he's up to now because he has some great training to help engineers and architects get a handle on building apps that respect security and privacy. And Jim, it's good to see you, my friend. You've been all over the place lately.
Sean Martin, it's really good to see you. You too, Marco. It's good to see both you fine gentlemen. I'm
Yeah,
really happy
you have
to
to
be
throw him in there. I understand. I understand.
I mean, he's in the room. He's here. I want to acknowledge his existence,
That's
I
You
right.
just
guys
hey,
woke me up.
Marco.
Might as well just consider me.
I know. There you go. All right. We'll give you a moment in time, but let's start with OWASP because I know you're still involved, which is fantastic, and you've been involved for quite a while. Let's start there, and then we can go back a little bit more how you got into that, and then where you're headed next. But kind of give us a view into what you were involved with it with OWASP.
Well, early on, I was just a developer looking for information on secure coding, and I kept running into OWASP relatively early in the foundation's creation. So I found myself talking to Eric Sheridan and Jeff Williams really early on, answering some secure coding questions, and that kind of sucked me in. And I began going to conferences, participating in conversations, and being on the leader list, which is always a interesting email list to be on at OWASP, and go to conferences. I delivered a little bit of training and worked on a variety of different projects over time, right? And and it's just great to find a community of people who are extraordinarily passionate, sometimes a little obsessive on application security and software engineering and security assessment. It was just a place I could, talk about these issues. And flash forward today, like almost 20 years later, I'm focusing on two main projects right now: the OWASP Cheat Sheet Series, and there are other volunteers like um, there's a group of other very powerful engineers who are helping me lead the project and who are helping actually add content. This is like a living encyclopedia of secure coding and application security knowledge. I love the cheat sheet series, right? I just saw someone drop in a drone security cheat sheet, which I think is fascinating. So always charging forward there. The other project I work on today is the application security verification standard. And the big players there are Elar Lang and Josh Grossman. They're doing the vast majority of the heavy lifting this year. I'm just annoying them with comments and issues that I submit on a regular basis just to keep them smiling. But like this is standard, mostly again led by Elar Lang, is like really got the pole position for this 5.0 version coming out, and Josh Grossman, he's like our de facto adult leader in the room a lot of the times, very passionate group of people. But there's a lot of other volunteers under the leadership group who are putting massive amounts of work in for the standard. And we kind of rewrote the whole thing. And I'm extremely excited and impressed with the work that's been done for ASVS, Application Security Verification Standard 5.0. And that's going live in the next couple of months. So this is the things I'm working on. And I'm also super excited to go to Barcelona for an OWASP conference and DC. I like DC, Marco. It's a nice town.
So, and AppSec Global Barcelona. I'm still trying to work that out. I'm hoping to see you there, and we can have a good chat. Perhaps a coffee there as well.
Absolutely.
Coffees are inexpensive there, and they're good.
I'm going to try to get out to Barcelona as early as I can. Maybe even as early as June 23rd, 24th, and the conference is like the week of the 26th. So, and right after OWASP Barcelona, I'm going to SecApp Dev. I love SecApp Dev. This is where I go and learn stuff from all these insane professors. SecApp Dev is in Leuven University. It's a training event where a whole bunch of professors come in to teach all these different secure coding and software security classes. And students show up from around the region, Belgium, all over the world, actually. And for lunch every day, we have fine dining. We have like real fancy Belgian meals. And so try to a little highbrow. And it's a nice experience, not just the food, but just, again, another group of people who are extremely passionate and interested in application security. I get to meet a lot of the people that are my heroes when I go there, like Bart Pernier and several others. So I'm excited. That's what I'm up to.
Super cool. And I'm sure there's tons more, which is beyond impressive.
Never ends.
I don't know how you do it all. And by the way, and I want you to, this isn't an OWASP commercial, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, building an app might be easy. Architecting an app that can survive and be sustainable and secure and resilient and all the other stuff that businesses really care about, it starts to run off the rails a bit.
It's brutal.
You start adding all these requirements beyond just functionality and speed, right? And so OWASP, I want you to describe what OWASP is just for a second. But OWASP does all this work to help coalesce some of these challenges and provide guides and tools and other materials to give engineers the understanding of what to do. Sometimes it's even with all that, maybe it makes it even more difficult. And that's where you come in. We're going to get into that in a bit to help navigate some of this stuff. But just because we've mentioned OWASP, Open Web App Security Program, if I'm not mistaken, just give us the 2-minute what it is so people know that there's tons of projects and all that kind of stuff.
OWASP was originally named the Open Web Application Security Project. As software security is more important than just the web, it's like now it's the OWASP Worldwide Application Security Project. And there's 3 tiers to the foundation that I hold dear, right? There's the conference circuit where people can go meet community, attend talks about application security topics I find are fascinating. And then a training program if you want to take a more in-depth training class. That's the conference circuit. It's social, it's nice, get to meet people in person. We have these conferences all over the world. The second tier are the projects that OWASP is building. And these are tools. Like in the past, we had OWASP that's moved to the Linux Foundation. There are other tools like secure coding libraries for Java and other programming languages. And there's just a variety of different security assessment tooling that people have donated to the OWASP Foundation, little utilities to big giant projects. And I think the third tier is documentation. These are things like the Cheat Sheet Series and Application Security Verification Standards. We're also looking at things like the wiki with lots of knowledge articles. So people can just go to Google, ask topics, and land on OWASP pages that will teach them about these different security topics. They can download and use some of the projects that aid in a variety of application security tasks. Like one of the ones I was using recently is the OWASP dependency checker. I can wire this into my development setup and it will scan my application for out-of-date, insecure third-party libraries. This is a software composition analysis tool that's open source from the OWASP Foundation. And then again, documentation, where people are reading about all of these application security topics. There's the main wiki. And again, I work on the Cheat Sheet Series, which is like a living encyclopedia of AppSec knowledge. And that's OWASP. And this is open source. No one's really getting hired among the community. There's a staff that runs a foundation. You can't really fire anyone. So it's like an interesting group of people who are ultra passionate about these topics. I think it's a fascinating cast of characters, mixed nuts for sure. And I enjoy the community a great deal. And Sean, I've probably been to almost 100 different countries visiting OWASP chapters and OWASP friends of mine. It's been quite a ride the last 20 years or so. That's OWASP. That's OWASP from my subjective perspective.
It's how we met. It's how we met at an OWASP conference and AppSec conference, I believe it was.
Yep.
But all that volunteer work doesn't cut the mustard. Right? People need to make money and earn a living and all that good stuff, while continuing to do what they care about. Hopefully, right, Marco?
Yeah, and you use, Jim, a lot of adjective to describe this community. But the one that stuck to me, you used it at the beginning, was obsessed, which is, I think...
That's on nuts.
Well, you use nuts too, but that's... What I'm saying is, these are all good things when you're securing the business and our society and the software and the app in particular. You need to have that attitude. I think that's why you need this kind of people, you need this group of people to come together. So I want to go a little bit back to when it started for you, meaning, up early on, you see, it was a cool way to do business, a cool way to create services. And then people like you obsess that, what the hell? It needs to be in a certain way. And that's why the community got created. So your first thought, looking back at, this is what I want to do. This is what it's going to be, not only my passion, my obsession, but also my business.
Yeah, when I started interfacing with OWASP, first of all, like some of the early people I talked to were super generous with their time to answer technical questions. I remember Eric Sheridan really early on was giving me a detailed explanation of cross-site scripting defense and why certain defense works and certain defense doesn't. He didn't have to spend his time. I was some nobody, just some developer in the corner somewhere. And he and other people were kind enough to give me their time and explain some of these topics to me. It got me hooked. I'm like, all right, this is a huge knowledge base that's going to be incredibly important as time ticks on in the next couple of decades. And sure enough, it was. And I just kind of got sucked in, started reading, talking, joining. And it was just, I could tell that this knowledge was going to be fundamental to my future. And early on, as I started learning new techniques, I would do a combination of contribute additions to the wiki, but also commercially, I would build my own training courseware so I can teach developers about security. So I did that double fork where, again, I'm not just learning and taking it away for a business. I was contributing to the wiki quite a bit and still do submit PRs on occasion. And I shifted gears from software development into doing more education probably about 15 years ago. My great-great-grandfather, great-grandfather, grandfather, and father are all professors. So like teaching is like a big part of my family lineage, the Manico family, right? And so when I started doing teaching, I see it like half having good material and being a good student and continuously studying. Don't be a jerk in class and be willing to be corrected by these smart engineers I'm teaching in class. I learned most from getting corrected in class over the years, by the way. I've been in class so much. I've been beat down by students well over a decade, and it's hardened me to be able to answer questions really detailed now. So I like it. And half of it is the tech part of it and the student part and the study, but the other half is the performance art. Like I want to I've learned that by giving a good presentation, by taking the drinking coffee, being awake, joking around, letting some of my weird part of my personality come out, be vulnerable in front of the class. It helps. It makes it so instead of being like this boring, monotone 8-hour slog your boss told you to go to, I try to make it as enjoyable as I can. Give people. I usually find someone in the class who's giving me a hard time and use them as the person I'm going to give a hard time to the entire class. I always go back to them. Like this one guy in class, we nicknamed him the Hammer. So I'm like, what do you think, Hammer? So all throughout the class, I'm giving him a hard time, and it just makes it so rather than just being a boring slog, and for me too, it's not just for them. It helps keep me amused when I'm talking and teaching for like multiple 8-hour days in a row.
I mean, when you look back at my year in college, I remember the teachers more than the class, right? I mean that's how you get people hooked. That's a plus, and I can definitely tell that not only because I've known you for a while, but the energy is there, and you need that, especially I think because from my perspective, it's something that is very hard to understand. I'm not on that tech side of things, the coding side of things, but I do understand that you prepare a course and 2 months later it could be old in a way that it's always constantly moving. So as it moves, you have to keep it interesting for the class. I mean, how do you adapt to the quick changes in the topics and in the issues that you have to resolve and keep it fresh and fun at the same time?
When I was teaching my first classes years ago, I was talking about building Java server pages securely with escaping.
Mm-hmm.
That's not so much of a common technology anymore. A lot of people have moved to React and Angular and all these JavaScript frameworks. So I went to a bunch of talks on how to secure React. I experiment with it in my own code. I found mentors like Ron Paris and Liren Tal, who are really like global leaders in this framework security and JavaScript security space. And I grabbed knowledge from a lot of different angles, and every time I taught a class on React security, for example, a student would correct me. That doesn't make sense. I think it should be this way. And I'd go research it and fix my content. So it's not just me. It's like the hundreds of people I've taught this course to, good mentorship early on, and constantly refining the material. After the first time I taught a React class compared to I'm probably past 100. Like the last time I taught React a couple days ago, it's like night and day, the level of detail and understanding of it. So I do a lot of free talks to help, because it's just a number game for me. The more I've given a talk on a certain topic, the better that talk is going to be. So I practice a lot. Sometimes practice in front of a mirror, listening to the melodious sound of my own voice, just to practice a new topic, right? And admittedly, I use a lot of AI tools now to review my content and look for gaps, help me find just any kind of mistakes or technical errors. And I found that to be an invaluable tool as a content author to help as a co-pilot, not co-pilot, but as a editorial assistant in the content creation I'm doing. It's an invaluable tool. Raw, it's bad. I got to review the work. I'm not completely all the way there, but so content creation and how to make it fun. That's just, again, the word that comes to mind is you got to be a little bit vulnerable in the class. Tell stories.
Yeah.
Got to make. I find that making fun of myself is not a bad thing. So I'm not trying to show up being too pretentious or trying to be the lead in the room. I'm like, yeah, I'm an entitled Bay Area developer, and I can see him just relax when I say stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, I prefer my latte delivered to my desk. I'm so entitled. I've had lunch made for me by chefs at work for way too long for it not to actually affect me. So and when I'm able to joke around like that, I could just see people oh, thank God. He's not going to take himself too seriously. We're going to be okay.
It's one of us, right? I mean, I think that's the feeling. You've been there, you've done things, and you're learning from the class too. Because teaching is a two-way road.
Absolutely,
yeah,
big time. And just keep practicing, keep building content. Listen to what my customers ask for. They're the ones who drove what content I'm working on, and they've helped driven my style.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about that, Jim, because in addition to the back and forth and the interaction and the human nature of teaching and learning in the full circle in all directions. Um, it also has to be relevant, right? So, and this is where I think tremendous amount of information available, understanding in a way that applies to my role on my project, within my team, within the to meet the objectives of the business, things start to get really crazy. So how do you find? Well, first off, are the students hungry to hear what you have to say, and then how do they come back to you to say, well, this is how I need to use it. I need to use it in this build environment. I need to use it on this type of project style, waterfall, whatever it is, or we're trying to push the limits on some new technologies. We're building in all these services through API, whatever it is. I don't know. How do you find them coming to you and saying, I love what you're saying, but how do I take it and do X, Y, and Z with what you have?
And I want to answer that question in a special way, right? Is that sometimes I'm getting questions about how to use certain frameworks or how to build certain software, and I've been there before, and I have a good answer for them on the spot. I give them some details, give them some references, and I have a confidence level of my answer, and I'm done. Now, sometimes I have some ideas, but my confidence level to answer completely might be a little bit lower. So I'll say, look, this is what comes up for me. These are the ideas I think, but I don't have all the answers here. Let me get back to you on this. Can I do a little bit of research? Let me do some research and I'll get back to you. And I'll go read some docs and do the research and come back to them. Now, with the new tools coming up, it supercharges me as an educator. So I've been experimenting with all the major engines, and I use different GPTs for different topics that I've fed certain research into. Like I put a lot of my React research into an OpenAI model called the Secure React Architect, which has all the security rules I think those developers should use inside of that private GPT. So I have things for threat modeling, things for like cloud security, and I have a couple different GPTs with research that I like in it. So when they ask me a question, when I'm teaching, I got this live right in front of me. So these days they ask a question, I'm going to type it in real quick, boom, in one of my GPTs and look at the answer. I'm a speed reader, right? And also not, sometimes I can skip sentences just to get the gist of it quickly. So I can get if I can answer most of the question and I'm missing a couple details, I can now use modern tooling to look that up fast, live, on the spot, and I don't have to graveyard so many questions anymore. So look at this, Sean. Like, I'm not ashamed to say this. I'm using AI for reviewing content creation, looking for mistakes or gaps in my content. They've looked at my catalog. I had AI look at my catalog and say, I want to be ahead of the game. What should I be building? They're like, get some post-quantum computing. In fact, teach developers about quantum entanglement for quantum networks. That's going to be bigger and bigger in the next couple of years. And I already got asked for it. I'm like, thank you. And then in class, I'll use it as an aid to help me answer complicated questions. And it never answers a question perfectly, but it throws enough seeds at me where it gives me more detail. Like, for example, AI might give me these 4 topics. It might not describe it well, but those topic categories are good, and it will help spear some ideas in me to be able to answer these questions to students better.
Yeah.
And so it's getting easier to answer hard questions is really the long and short of it, Sean.
Yeah, I had many conversations with teachers in many other fields, and the first approach to AI for many was, we're gonna ban it from class. We're not gonna use. I mean, that's gone. That train has left the station because you just can't put it back in the can. But the fact that you're using them actually makes me curious. Do you actually see that by the students seeing the teacher using it so openly and so productively, do they actually change their attitude towards AI and maybe put it in their learning process as well?
Yeah, I show them what I'm doing. Like, I'll open up a prompt of an engine I like in the day, and I'll say, please act as an expert in Kubernetes security. And I'm going to ask you some hard questions. Please don't answer any questions unless you have 100% certainty that you're giving a good answer. If you're not sure, just tell me you're not sure.
Yeah.
And then, so that's called like prepping the engine for changing the weights around for a certain kind of subject expertise. I'll get slightly better answers. And then I'll ask the question, and I'm a very verbose person, right? And it's not always a good thing. Like someone could ask me a very short question. Like one of my famous character flaws is really long answers to short questions. But that verbosity, when I'm asking AI these questions, a student may ask me a short question, and I'm going to expand it out with a lot more detail so I get a more detailed answer. And I'll show them the tool that I'm using. And I'm like, and I'll even say, I'll give a student an assurance level of how confident I am in this answer when I answer them. And if I can't hit a good confidence level, then I'll say, let me graveyard this and I'll do some research and get back to you. Like if it's Kubernetes, I'll go running out to Jimmy Mesta, runs Rad Security. He's a Kubernetes. Jimmy, I need your help, buddy. He's like, what's up? So I'll go, and I know people. Sean, I know people.
You know people.
So
we know Jimmy too. Jimmy's
when
cool.
I get hard questions, I got like, if I want to talk about mobile, I'll go to Sven. Sven runs the mobile application security standard. I'm like, hey, Sven, I got a little favor to ask. So if I can answer the question, all right, back to Marco. I'm going to bring this back around. Let's bring it back around. You ready, Marco? So 20 years ago, I'm meeting all the OWASP people, and I'm making mostly good relationships with some of the most famous, brilliant security people I've ever met. Now, 20 years later, I'm teaching, and I get the hard question. I can't answer it. But I don't have to worry, Marco, because I know people. I can go reach out to a Sven, one of the top mobile security guys on the planet, or Jimmy. Nobody knows more than Kubernetes than that young man. Like he is a Kubernetes fanatic, and he can go super deep with crazy questions. And if he can't answer it, he'll go to his staff of crazy Kubernetes people. So, Marco, 20 years ago, that work in building community at OWASP helps me as a professor 20 years later to have a community to help me answer even the hardest questions among my students and customers. And so I'm grateful for that work 20 years ago to help me do my job today.
I love it.
How much of that, I love that, Jim. How much of that comes through in the class? And then, I don't know, can you describe the course? I know you do some trainings at events. I know you do some trainings or courses at universities. Do you do stuff on site at companies and organizations? Do you pull?
All the above.
So describe what that collection of stuff looks like and what a day in training or 2 days in training. I think it looks like you have going, right? 3 days in training?
There's three different ways I deliver training. I think it's interesting, right? Like number one, and my favorite way is I'll submit to a conference, right? Conference, they'll have a call for trainers. I'll submit usually a 2-day class. If they really beg me to, I'll do a 3-day class. For 2 days and I'm good. So I do a 2-day class, students sign up, I show up in Barcelona, students show up, and we have a party, we have fun. And so that's like different students from all kinds of different companies. And I do that like 3 or 4 times a year. It's not my main thing. The most common training I do is with my private clientele. What they do is I have a list of about 50 different presentations. I'll list a few off right now, like HTTP security basics, SQL and other injection, deserialization security, third-party library security, application layer intrusion detection. Then I'll have one like the European Union AI Act or adversarial machine learning, or maybe authentication best practices and OAuth 2 security. And it's a menu. So they'll go in and I have no idea what people are going to pick. People pick the weirdest combinations I would never expect, but that's the point of, I don't teach a class. I build 50 to 100 small learning modules. They pick what they want. I make suggestions and I teach the class that they build for themselves. 4 hours sometimes, 8 hours. Someone like just booked 7 days of classes over like 3 weeks. So yeah, an older customer who knows me good and bad. They know me well enough to keep bringing me back for years. I'm super grateful. And I teach what they want because I have a menu that's broken up into small pieces. If they want to do labs, I'll do labs, but it's going to require time to do labs. It's less material. And I do that over Zoom. And I do that. And that's the main Zoom or Teams. I should charge double for Teams. It's so bad. All right, you know that. But I do. I do live over a couple of days. I give them a copy of the recording, and they're happy because I give them all my PowerPoints. They get their content. They get a record. How much it costs extra to record? I'm like, I'll throw it in. I'm not that greedy, right? I charge a good day rate. It's standard training rate, and I'm super happy. And I see a lot of people bringing me back, and then more and more so now I have on sites. Like I'm going to Ireland. Someone's like, in Ireland, they want me to go teach for 2 days. Oh yeah, party time. So I'll make a little mini vacation. I'm going to go teach in Belfast for a couple days later in the year. That's rare, Sean and Marco. On-site live private training is rare because COVID kind of distributed the developer workforce significantly. But I do see like the coming back to the office, I'm getting asked to do on-site more and more, putting me back on the road. So that's it.
I'll meet you in Ireland, or at least give you some tips for what to do. Be good stuff. So, I'm curious. So clearly, if they're in touch with you, they see the need, and what I want to know is who is they? Because obviously you're an engineer at heart. The students are engineers. Do you have managers and executives that say, we need this stuff? And what does that engagement look like?
Let me take a step back. People contact me when they're ready to teach their relatively large team of developers about application security. That gives me such a jaded view or a slanted view of the industry because all these companies that are not teaching their developers, they don't exist to me, right?
100% interesting.
I even joke. I say, manager, hey, you teach your developers. I meet a manager at a conference. Do you teach your developers about security? He's like, no, we don't do that. I'm like, you're dead to me, buddy.
I can't have that conversation.
Yeah, I can't even look at you. Oh God, really? No. So I view the AppSec world as all these companies teaching their developers about security. That's my limited view of the world, and it's not as I talk to other people, that's not a real accurate view of the world. So
what I want to know then, Jim, is what's the trigger for them? What was there an event? Was there a regulation? Was there we need to innovate, and we recognize that this is necessary in order to push the limits on things? Or what's that conversation? I don't know if you get to hear it beforehand, but what's that like?
I'll give you 3 different kinds of customers and why they bring me in. I like the number 3. So 1, my favorite, it's rare. They're a startup. They got funding. They have a modest sized team, but their CISO or their one security guy believes, I want the whole team to have super in-depth training because that's going to make a difference in how we build this product. 3 times companies did that, and one of those companies turned into a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm not going to out them for obvious reasons, but I got to watch a company go from a startup of a small handful of people to a giant multinational, multi-billion-dollar company. And it was them. I didn't even have to ask them. Like I said, let's go do 1 training. They're like, no, let's do 6 this year. I'm like, you're crazy. You're a small startup. So one company, they believed that this would be a differentiator. So they booked, they paid, and they booked a lot of training early on aggressively. And when they went out in the market to compete with the other folks in this part of the industry, they crushed it because they didn't have a story about application security. They were doing it. And I asked the CISO there, how much Manicode do you want? Do you want me to go easy on him? He's like, no, dude, you give them a hard time. Give them the full Manicode. This is their job. This is not, I don't care about compliance. I want them. And I'm like, I can do that. Yeah, I can go for that. So they were like heavy duty. Let's take this seriously. And a couple times that was like in the startup world where either like they were getting ready to have an acquisition, they were in the middle of an M&A, or they were a startup who believed it would differentiate them in the market. And every time it ended up being big money for those companies that took it seriously that early on. The second kind of customer is probably my least favorite, right? They're compliance. Like PCI DSS.
Let's out some of them.
What's that?
So let's out some of them.
Well, they're like, my PCI DSS auditor told me I had to do this, and I don't want to. I'm going to check this box. And you know what? Every time I go into a company that hires me to check a box for compliance, it works out well. At the end of it, they're like, oh, this is okay. So even though they bring me in for maybe not like a high value reason, it always ends up being a positive thing in my experience, right? If the class goes well and students are having fun and they're getting good information, it goes well. The third kind of customer is they just want to do security. Maybe they had an incident, or they're just getting bigger faster. They're doing some security scanning. They're not happy with the results. The upper level managers are really starting to care about this, and then they're bringing me in for training for that reason. And like, I bring that up because they're not going to waste developers time for several days doing training unless they really care about it. So in all these scenarios, when I'm brought in, the company has already reached a maturity stage one way or another. Either they're being dragged kicking and screaming, or they think it's a good thing to do. Whatever the reason, they're bringing someone in to take all their developers away from development for days at a time. So they're already at a level of maturity that I think is good. I think it's good for them to care about care about these topics.
Have you cloned yourself yet?
Well, I have like 10 other professors. I can't match all these specialties, right? So
Right.
like if someone's like for mobile, I got my buddy Sven who teaches for me. For Kubernetes and the DevOps world, Mesta teaches. For like cryptography, I got like Dr. Giannis and Dr. Kostas out of Athens who are PhDs in cryptography. Their nuclear brains are amazing. And so and several other teachers along in my little catalog. So I do a lot of the teaching for the web security stuff, but my customers are getting bigger. They want more of a full program. So I've been bringing in other professors for 15 years, and the ones who are left are the ones who like stayed with me for 15 years and still made customers happy. So after all these years of bringing in different professors, the ones I have now, I'm really proud of. They're rock stars, and it helps me go after bigger training contracts for bigger companies.
I love it. I love it. So if
cool.
somebody wants to get in touch with you, and then after listening to this conversation, what's the first step? Just
They just drop me an email. I'm Jim@manicode.com, MANICODE.com. I have a catch-all email address. Send me anything, and I'll send you a list of modules and give you pricing, explain the details. This is a simple business, right?
Yeah.
We pick some content, we set a date, we do training, and it's easy. And I give everyone the recordings, and everyone's happy. I want happy customers. That's my story.
it's a good story.
Nice one. Well, even though Marco's here with an attempt to stop me to ask one more question, I'm going to ask one more question.
Go for it. Go for it.
It's a question I like to ask in general for broader security, and I'm assuming you're going to support my theory here, which is that security, when done well, has a mindset and knowledge and information to help drive the business in ways that is not possible if security is not involved. And I think specifically when we dig down into application security, the training that you do not only makes engineers better at building secure apps, it makes them better engineers, which makes better apps, which makes for a better business. Have you experienced that?
Sean, absolutely, positively, big fat yes all the way. Security is not a waste. Increases quality. You're gonna eventually be forced to fix your bugs by your customers or regulators or something. And when you deal with it early and deal with it well, the cost to address these security problems goes down long term. And it drives engineering excellence, and it protects a company from like legal exposure. It builds trust with their customers. Sean, this is such a big win-win situation. Nobody would bring me back and burn money and developer time, and other educators in the space who do great as well. It's not about me. It's just about the space in general. Nobody would keep bringing us in to teach these developer classes if it wasn't helping the business in some way, right? They would try to skimp around it to check a box, and they're not. They're ordering more and more classes from more professors and more detail. More detail is what they're asking for. It wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't adding value to the business. So yeah, Sean, I'm a believer that what we do in application security is a good, positive thing for business and for the individuals who take the class for their career. This is a big, big win-win-win type situation.
Well, and I think that you already answered to that, not to take away from the last question from Sean, because I think that it's an important point to make. But when you were telling the story of the startup that build the business on security, that's design, security by design, which is that quote that we use all the time in the industry. And it's the ideal. It's the ideal world. And that's how it should be. And stay up to date, because what you teach today gonna need an update maybe a few months from now. So it's an ongoing process, like teaching, learning, and I just love the fact that we reconnected here. I'm glad that I was part of this conversation, because I was really curious to know the approach to teaching that you have nowadays. And Sean, thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed the coffee with you guys.
Thanks for waking up. I know. Cheers to the coffee.
Cheers to you guys.
And cheers to seeing you on the road, Jim. And cheers to all the great work you do for the community and for organizations that I'm sure many of us use at some point in our lives that we don't know you're helping. And thanks for sharing the stories of the outcomes from some of the companies you help as well. I think it's really cool. That startup, for example, is a great example. So Jim at Manicode.com, obviously Manicode, MANICODE.com to connect with Jim, select your modules, level up your engineers. It's time. And most importantly, find a way to meet Jim and enjoy some time with him. He's a good dude. He mentioned all these other folks, and Jim's one of the best. So thank you, Jim, for joining us, and thanks everybody for listening and watching. And more coming from Jim, so stay tuned. We're going to more detail from Jim in future episodes here on ITSP Magazine. So thanks for sharing the story with us, Jim.
Thank you, Marco, and thank you so much, Sean. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Ciao.